Friends, we had covered the story of the first 8 episodes of Summertime Rendering on our channel, and in today's video, we will explain the story from episode 9 to 16. To understand this, you must watch my first video, the link to which I will provide in the description and pinned comment. And the next part, which will be the final part, part 3, will be out very soon. Just make sure to complete 10 likes on this video by then. So, the story begins with a video being shown, which was recorded by the real Ushio on her phone before her accident. In that video, both the real Ushio and her shadow were present, and they were specifically recording this message for Shinpei. In that same video, Ushio confirms that her shadow is not evil, as we already know. Here, Ushio explains the whole story. So, on the 17th of July, Ushio was told about the shadows by Shirori when the real Shirori saw her own shadow for the first time. But of course, Ushio didn't believe her. Then, on the 18th of July, while cleaning the beach, both Ushio and Mio saw Ushio's shadow. Ushio started chasing her shadow, but she couldn't catch it. However, this at least made one thing clear: the shadow story that Shirori told was true. Now, after returning home, Ushio goes to take a bath, where she finds her shadow hiding in the bathtub. But the funny thing here was that both of them thought they were the real human, and the other one was a shadow. Then, both of them go to Mount Takanosu, where they want to search for Shiori's shadow. While walking, they reach So's father, Dr. Hishigata's old clinic, which was now abandoned. In case you don't remember, let me remind you that Hishigata is the same doctor who performed Ushio's autopsy. Anyway, suddenly, a shadow appears in front of the two Ushios and takes Ushio's form. This shadow then attacks Ushio. The real Ushio attacks the entity's shadow, but nothing happens to it. In fact, the very next moment, the evil shadow entity strikes Shadow Ushio on the knee. At the last moment, Shadow Ushio realizes that she is a shadow, and she attacks the evil entity. During this scuffle, we learn that usually, shadows have an instinct to eliminate the real human and take their place. But Ushio's shadow didn't have such feelings. Now, in the present time on the beach, Shadow Ushio remembers everything and takes Shinpei and So into the past, just to show them what she knows. The three of them enter Shadow Ushio's memory and see that on the 21st, everyone had gathered at the beach for swimming. The real Ushio tells Shadow Ushio to transform into her pendant so that no one would be surprised seeing both of them together. At that moment, due to everyone's carelessness, Shirori goes swimming alone and starts drowning in the middle of the ocean. Ushio runs to save her, and of course, she is not alone. The real Ushio sees that Shirori is being held underwater by Shadow Shirori. Shadow Ushio fights Shiori's shadow, but nothing significant happens, and Shadow Shirori manages to trap the real Ushio underwater. Wow, this is turning into a tongue twister. But I hope you guys are understanding what I'm saying. Who is real and who is a shadow? Anyway, now both Ushio and Shirori are saved by Shadow Ushio, but in return, Shiori's shadow drowns Shadow Ushio underwater. Then, the evil entity returns and attacks the real Ushio, ultimately eliminating her as well. And since Shirori was already gone by then, Shadow Shirori takes on her appearance and pretends that she had drowned. So pulls Ushio's drowning body out of the water, while Mio brings the evil entity to the shore. But neither of them knows about the intense battle that took place underwater. Seeing this entire scene, So and Shinpei cry a lot. But as they exit the memory, something strange happens. Basically, the evil entity grabs Shinpei's hand and says, "I have found you." At that moment, we viewers see that inside Shiori's body is the same child that all the shadows refer to as Mother. We had already seen her on the evening of the 24th during the summer festival. The entity then challenges Shinpei, saying, "You won't be able to escape again." As soon as this happens, they all return to the present, but the entity's handprint remains on Shinpei's arm. Anyway, in the present, Ushio interprets that since the evil entity didn't completely erase her, she was able to retain some of her memory and come back to life on the day of the summer festival. This also allowed her to time travel with Shinpei. At that moment, it starts raining, and so, Ushio and Shinpei head to Dr. Hishigata's clinic. Meanwhile, Takiko and Mio take shelter at a bus stop, where Takiko asks Mio to stay with her tomorrow night. Just then, a policeman named Mayuri arrives, investigating the disappearance of Shiori's family. On the other side, As they walk toward the mountain clinic, Shadow Ushio transforms back into the pendant. So remembers that his father never allowed them to wander near the clinic. Now they enter the clinic, where everything is broken and in ruins. Ushio starts exploring the first floor, while So and Shinpei investigate the ground floor. So finds a medicine cabinet filled with various poisons, like mercuric chloride. Meanwhile, they also find a statue of a goddess. The statue had a long neck, and from the way its belly looked, it seemed like she was pregnant. Shinpei figures out that this statue is of the goddess Hirako-sama, who is highly revered by the people of this island. In fact, the summer festival is celebrated in her honor. Here, Shinpei notices an opening beside Hiriko's statue and tells Ushio, "Turn into a shadow and check if there's anything behind it." When Ushio does so, she finds a hidden door behind the tiles. You might remember that Hiriko's statue had a swollen belly. Ushio scans it and discovers that there is a key inside. Most likely, this is the key that will open the hidden door. Using one of her hair strands, Ushio creates an exact replica of the key, and together, they unlock the door. The path ahead felt like a dark cave, and the three of them continued moving forward through this secret tunnel. As soon as Ushio entered, she could sense the presence of shadows, and Shinpei had also brought his nail gun to capture them. Inside the tunnel, they encountered a joint shadow that looked like a child. The three friends worked together to remove it from their path. Moving further inside, So suggested to Shinpei that if Ushio could replicate anything using her hair strands, she should create another nail gun. Shinpei replied that they had already tried, but she could only copy the exterior. She couldn't recreate the internal mechanisms, so it was useless. As they progressed, they started seeing numerous baby shadows everywhere, and Shinpei, feeling uneasy, warned everyone to step back. The scene cuts here. In the next scene, we see Nizu and Hizuru outside the tunnel near a manhole cover. They enter the tunnel and begin eliminating shadows as they advance. Meanwhile, inside the tunnel, Shinpei, Ushio, and So battle the shadows. The scene then shifts focus to Mio, who is worried because Shinpei hasn't returned home. Suddenly, she sees Shirori, who gestures toward the manhole, indicating that Shinpei is inside. Mio then tricks Tatsumura into going inside the tunnel with her. At this point, the scenario unfolds as follows. So, Ushio and Shinpei are fighting shadows, while Hizuru and Nizu are also progressing inside the tunnel. Meanwhile, Mio and Tatsumura search for the tunnel's C formation passage. Shinpei's team reaches a place where someone has replicated ocean life. At this moment, Ushio starts feeling intense pain because her right arm hasn't fully healed yet. She explains that to heal her arm, she needs the real Ushio's body, as she requires its data for regeneration. Shinpei wonders if he will ever be able to heal Ushio because her body has already turned to ashes. Just then, they hear Takiko's voice, who unexpectedly appears before them. Now, the story shifts to Nizu and Hizuru, who need to cross a barrier. Once they do, they'll reach the same tunnel where Shinpei's team is. To summarize, the tunnel Shinpei discovered is actually the cave of the goddess Hiriko, which has always been hidden from the island's natives. During the Sino-Japanese War, the Japanese army completely sealed this tunnel to prevent enemy soldiers from taking refuge inside. Nizu initially thought this was just a local legend, but today, he had discovered it for real. Just then, Mio and Tatsumura arrive, and Hizuru quickly hides. Mio sees a shadow dissolve iron bars right in front of her eyes and chases after it. The good thing about this was that it gave Hizuru and Nizu access to the tunnel. Now, the story returns to Shinpei's team. Shinpei starts suspecting that Takiko is also a shadow and shoots her with a nail gun. But to their shock, Takiko was still human. Takiko insists that they follow her somewhere else and reveals that she has also captured Ushio. Meanwhile, at Dr. Hishigata's clinic, we see Inspector Miyuri lying dead. He was supposed to present food to Miyuri, but something happened. In the present, Takiko explains that she was doing all of this because her father, Dr. Hishigata, had instructed her to. So, who knew nothing about this, is told not to overthink the situation. The three of them decide to follow Takiko. At the same time, Nizu and Hizuru arrive at the same spot. They begin to piece together how Shiori's shadow managed to return even after Hizuru had eliminated her. Shiori's shadow was clever enough to slip through even the smallest holes underground, which is how she survived. Shiori's evil shadow taunts Hizuru, saying, "Why did you come back? The last time we met, I told you that if you ever appeared before me again, you would die." Now, what exactly is happening here? Its backstory will soon be revealed. Just then, Shiori's shadow, whom we will now call Hain, is joined by her ally. The two of them attack Nizu and eliminate him. Hizuru is forced to flee from the scene. The scene then shifts to Takiko, who takes the three friends to the main part of Hiriko's cave. Inside, they find a shrine-like area where a woman in a red kimono sits, transfusing blood into herself. This woman is Hiriko, the mother of all shadows, who has been hiding in this cave, living in the form of a shadow. Seeing this, Shinpei gets furious, realizing that Hain, or Hiriko, had been deceiving him all along. Just then, food is brought for Hain, delivered by Dr. Hishigata's assistant, Nagoro, who was obviously a shadow. She carries 2 boxes of food. One box contains Mayuri, but what about the other box? Well, it contains Ushio. Yes, Dr. Hishigata had presented Ushio's body to Hain. The body used in Ushio's funeral was actually a body double, which had been arranged by Dr. Hishigata himself. But why would Dr. Hishigata do this? Because for thousands of years, the Hishigata family has been responsible for feeding Hain on the island. Dr. Hishigata was simply continuing this ancient tradition. Now, let me tell you that Hishigata had a personal motive in all of this, which will soon be revealed. Takiko and her brother So get into an argument. Takiko blames So, saying, "You're useless. That's why Dad gave me this responsibility." Here, she reveals a secret. Dr. Hishigata is doing all of this to save his wife. Takiko explains that Hain turned their mother into a shadow at Dr. Hishigata's request. And that's why Hain is stopping Shinpei, because she is the mother of all shadows. If Hain is destroyed, then their mother, who is currently a shadow, will also cease to exist. The shocking part? So had no idea about any of this. Before Hain can consume Ushio's body, Shinpei signals Ushio's shadow to copy a nail gun. Using this, they free Ushio just in time. Ushio's shadow then quickly reclaims her original body from Hain's grasp. Takiko tries to stop Shinpei from going against the shadows. But Ushio explains to Takiko that the shadows are just using her and that she doesn't need to listen to them. Ushio declares war against the shadows, and Takiko finally understands her point. Now, a battle breaks out between both groups. Ushio's shadow takes down multiple shadows, and Shinpei is just about to capture Hain. But then, we see a shocking twist. Hain's ally Shirda has taken Mio hostage. This suddenly weakens Shinpei's side, because obviously, if they make any move, Mio won't survive. Takiko, furious, demands answers from Shirda, saying, "You promised me that Mio wouldn't be harmed." To this, Shirda coldly reveals the truth. After the ritual on the 24th, no one on this island will be alive anyway. So does it even matter whether Mio dies today or later? Now, Takiko finally realizes that both the shadows and her own father have been deceiving her all along. The shadows' real plan? To wipe out everyone on the island. Before Takiko can say anything, Shirda fires a shot at her. However, So jumps in front of her to protect his sister. Still, Takiko doesn't survive, as Shirda mercilessly ends her life. Meanwhile, inside the tunnel, Hizuru, injured and struggling, encounters Tatsumura, who is obviously wandering alone after Mio left. Hizuru requests him to carry her deeper into the tunnel. Tatsumura doesn't really want to, but he ultimately agrees. Back in Hiriko's cave, Hain calls Ushio toward her and then rips out Shinpei's right eye, causing him immense pain. After this, Hain attempts to turn Ushio's shadow into an evil version of herself. At that moment, Shinpei's eye suddenly restores itself back onto his face. Yes, Shirda then explains that Shinpei's eyes hold a special power. Whatever he sees, he can turn into reality. If he dies, reality alters, and he can relive that moment in a time loop. As Shirda explains this, he suddenly decapitates Mio before anyone can even react. Before they can process what just happened, Hizuru fires a bullet at Shirda, but in return, Shirda kills both Hizuru and Tatsumura. Now, Shirda looks at Shinpei and asks, "Do you really think this bullet can kill me?" To this, Shinpei smirks and responds, "Maybe not, but they bought me enough time." At this moment, we realize Shinpei had secretly consumed a dose of mercuric chloride, which he had stolen from the clinic earlier. Yes, his plan was clear. If he had no other option left, he would consume the poison and die. And if he dies, what will happen? Well, the time loop will reset once again. At that very moment, Ushio also reverses the effects of the shadows and travels back in time along with Shinpei. This means not only Hain but Ushio as well is incredibly powerful. As soon as Shinpei opens his eyes, he finds himself not on the boat, but at Hizuru and Nizu's hideout. And he wasn't alone. Ushio was with him. This time, Shinpei explains the entire battle to Hizuru, and she finally understands that Ushio is not an evil shadow. So this time, they decide to team up. Hizuru then tells Shinpei that his right eye allows him to see shadows, and this eye was actually given to him by Ushio. However, Ushio has no memory of this. The moment Hizuru and Ushio shake hands, Hizuru regains all the memories of past timelines. Now, they form a new plan. They will capture Hain when she is in the form of Shirori, and then Ushio will erase her. Just like Hain had planned to do with Ushio before. Once the Mother of Shadows is gone, the entire island will finally be free from them. Meanwhile, So goes to talk to his father, but his father doesn't take him seriously and tells him to come back after 10 p.m. At the same time, Dr. Hishigata receives a call from someone, informing him that Shinpei and his group are investigating the shadows. Now, who this unknown caller is, that's something we might find out later. As planned, Hizuru enters the house, while Shinpei and Nizu wait outside for her. Everyone assumed that, just like before, Shiori's shadow would try to escape from the third floor. But this time, things take a shocking turn. Instead of the shadow escaping, Hizuru falls from the third floor. Yes, Hain already knew what was going to happen. It turns out that Shinpei isn't the only one playing this time loop game. Hain is also doing the same. Apparently, both of them have the power to see shadows. Yes, our hero isn't the only one who can loop back in time. So can the villain. And just like Shinpei, Hain also remembers everything from the previous loops. At this moment, Shirda uses Hizuru's own hammer to kill her, and then he kills Nizu as well. Hain smirks and says, "Did you think you found me? No, I found you." In this timeline, Ushio kills Shinpei, and time rewinds again. But this time, Shinpei doesn't go back to the recent past. He is sent back 14 years. Now, we finally get to see Hizuru's backstory. Shinpei watches as Hizuru and her brother, Ryunosuke, arrive at a cafe, where Shinpei's mother used to work. We learn that Hizuru and Ryunosuke are twins, and Shinpei's father, along with the others, also arrives at Alan's shop to celebrate something. Shinpei's parents were marine archaeologists, who spent most of their time exploring the oceans. Recently, they had made a major discovery. Meanwhile, Hizuru tells Ryunosuke that she has made a new friend in Mount Takanosu, and she wants to go meet them. Hearing this, something clicks in Shinpei's mind, and he rushes toward Dr. Hishigata's clinic. At the clinic, Hizuru, Asako, and Ryunosuke arrive to meet this mysterious friend. However, even after waiting for a long time, the friend never comes outside. Eventually, Ryunosuke and Asako leave. As soon as they leave, Hain appears at the window, and we finally understand the truth. It turns out that the friend Hizuru was talking about 14 years ago was none other than Hain herself. In this timeline, Hain looked like an innocent child, and it didn't seem like she could be a dangerous entity at all. Hizuru and Hain spend time together, and during their conversation, Hain reveals that Shirda never allows her to meet outsiders. She further explains that Shirda is a gigantic creature with 4 arms. Then, time jumps to the next day. While playing, Hizuru accidentally cuts her finger. To her surprise, Hain sucks on the wound and heals it instantly. That evening, Hain gets extremely hungry and confesses her hunger to Hizuru. At this moment, the two of them promise to be friends forever. In the next vision, Shinpei sees Hizuru talking to Nizu, who is carrying food for Hain. Meanwhile, Ryunosuke arrives near Dr. Hishigata's clinic while looking for Hizuru. There, he finds Hain sitting alone and crying. But as soon as Ryunosuke approaches her, Hain suddenly bites him. Not only does she drink his blood, but she also feeds on all his memories. So, you see, Hain ended up killing her own best friend Hizuru's brother. And this tragic event was the reason behind the deep connection between Hizuru and Hain. As soon as Hain realizes what she has done to Hizuru's brother, she screams in anger and pain, causing one of her eyes to pop out. Basically, this eye detaches from her body and runs away somewhere. At the same time, Hain also disappears from the scene. Soon after, two shadows appear and attack Hizuru, but they are unable to harm her. Just then, Nizu arrives and saves Hizuru. However, the shadows prove to be too strong for him. But suddenly, a miracle happens. Ryunosuke's consciousness enters Hizuru, and she starts fighting back fiercely. She not only defeats the shadows but also saves Nizu. At this moment, we realize that Hizuru has two personalities. When her hair is down, she is herself. But when she ties her hair up to fight, her brother Ryunosuke's consciousness takes over. Additionally, some of Hain's data has merged with Hizuru's body. As a result, Hizuru has also acquired certain shadow-like abilities. She single-handedly defeats both shadows. The next day, Hizuru leaves the island and moves to Tokyo. However, before she departs, she sees Hain, who threatens her. "This time, you survived. But if you ever return to the island, I will end you." After witnessing all these memories, Shinpei returns to July 22nd. There, he sees Hizuru heading to Shiori's house as part of the plan. However, since this timeline would lead to Hizuru's death, Shinpei stops her from going. At the same time, Hain also returns in this timeline. She comes up with a new strategy. She will kill Shinpei in every timeline before he has a chance to act. This way, his power to alter reality will be erased completely. As you already know, Shinpei can only use his ability a limited number of times. Once that limit is exceeded, he won't be able to time travel anymore. To explain this in simple terms, every time Shinpei jumps back in time, his starting point moves slightly forward. This means that his available time keeps shrinking with each loop. Just like the first time Shinpei rewound time, he woke up on the boat. The second time, he found himself outside the boat, in the city. Then, in another loop, he was in front of the ocean. Later, he woke up at Hizuru's secret hideout. So, as you can see, each time he loops back, his starting point moves forward. If this keeps happening, a point will come where Shinpei rewinds time but returns to the exact moment he left. Why? Because his starting point keeps shrinking. So, eventually, when he dies and rewinds, he won't go back further. He will just restart from his death point. And at that moment, his power will be gone forever. Hain deciphers this weakness and comes up with a plan. She will keep killing Shinpei over and over again until his power completely runs out. Realizing this, Shinpei's team changes their strategy. They start recruiting allies and preparing for the final battle. This time, everyone trusts them because Ushio shows them past timeline memories by touching their hands. Even Takiko, who once sided with the shadows, now understands their deception. She joins Shinpei's side. With Shinpei as their leader and Ushio as his support, their team is ready. The next scene shows them Nizu keeping an eye on the battlefield from a distance. But suddenly, Mio's shadow stabs her in the head, killing her instantly. That means their first ally is already out of the game before the battle even begins. And just like that, Shinpei finds himself in Ushio's house kitchen. This indicates that Hain killed him in the last loop. Now, we realize that before Shinpei and his friends could even make a move, Hain had already planned to waste his remaining rewinds by having him killed. And guess what? She used Nizu's gun to do it. At this point, Shinpei fully understands the time limit calculations. He realizes this might be his last chance to rewind time. So this time, he rectifies his mistake. He doesn't leave Nizu outside but keeps him close instead. Now, inside the school, things are more crucial than ever because this is Shinpei's second-to-last life. On July 22nd, all his friends prepare for the final war. A do-or-die battle against Hane and the shadows. Oh, and one more thing. Hane was able to track Shinpei every time, because she had left her handprints on his arms. Remember, I told you before, because of those handprints, Hane could always find him. Anyway, Shinpei now stands on the school field, facing Hane's entire army. Suddenly, Mio's shadow charges toward Shinpei, ready to attack. But at the last moment, Ushio grabs him and rushes inside the building. At the same time, Nizu starts firing bullets from the school building, forcing the shadows to reveal their true forms. Now, Hane and Shirda chase after Ushio and Shinpei, while Mio's shadow goes after Nizu to finish him off. Inside the school building, Hizuru takes control of the fight. Meanwhile, outside, Takiko, So, and the real Mio put up a tough fight against Shadow Mio. And Takiko's pet shadows attack Mio's shadow. During the battle, Shirda shoots Hizuru in the shoulder. But at the last second, Nizu saves her from being killed. Shirda gets injured and is forced to stay inside the building. Meanwhile, outside, Takiko's pet shadows attack Mio's shadow. But Hane tries to control them, ordering Mio's shadow to finish Takiko off. However, Mio's shadow refuses to obey. Why? Because Ushio is now controlling her. Yes, Ushio also has Hane's powers. And since she's a strong shadow herself, she can control other shadows' minds too. But suddenly, Shirda attacks Ushio, forcing her to retreat. At the same time, Mio's shadow is just about to kill Takiko. But So once again saves his sister. Inside the building, Ushio and Shirda engage in an intense battle. Together, they set Shirda's body on fire. But even as he burns, Hane launches a counterattack. Ushio manages to grab Hane and is about to erase her completely. But at the last second, Hane distracts Ushio with her innocent words, giving Shirda the opportunity to grab Ushio and drag her into the fire with him. Now, Shirda is already burning, but he also takes our MVP, Ushio, down with him. Shinpei is devastated, and before he can react, Shirda shoots him multiple times, making it seem like Shinpei's team is officially done for. But to everyone's shock, Ushio emerges from the fire, still alive, still standing, and completely annihilates Shirda. This means Ushio is so powerful that even fire couldn't burn her. And amid all this chaos, Shinpei notices something strange. Inside Shirda, there is a human being. Yes, friends, Shirda seems to be a combination of a shadow and a human, making him extremely dangerous. Suddenly, the fire dies down, and all the glass windows shatter. But somehow, Ushio is unable to completely erase Hane, and both Hane and Shirda manage to escape with their lives. After the war, we see Hane and Shirda sitting injured in the forest, hoping that Shinpei will die soon from the bullet wounds, so that they can revive themselves. But, to their shock, Shinpei is completely fine, because he was wearing a bulletproof vest. This means the time loop won't restart this time. In fact, Shinpei's team even captures Mio's shadow, and Ushio severs Hane's connection from her mind, bringing her over to their side. Now, Shinpei interrogates Mio's shadow. She explains that her powers are different from Ushio's. Unlike Ushio, who can copy things, Mio can't copy, but she can take someone else's form for a limited time. Turns out, she is Hane's grandchild, and she must replace the original within 7 days. If she fails, she will vanish on her own. Now, because Hane is weak, she plans to wipe out the entire island to absorb their strength. And behind this, she has an even bigger goal, which will soon be revealed. Anyway, the group heads to So's house to get some answers from Dr. Yashigata. On the way, Mio's shadow tries to confess her feelings to Shinpei. But when they reach home, they find that all their belongings are missing. So, Takiko takes them to her father's present-time clinic. There, Ushio was able to sense a shadow. The group heads to the morgue in the basement, where they discover a hidden room. And in that room, Ushio's original body is missing. At this moment, Takiko reveals a shocking truth. Her father's hall is directly connected to the Hiroko cave. So, the group decides to explore that path. Meanwhile, inside, So sees his mother's shadow holding Dr. Yashigata hostage. Ushio quickly severs all of Hain's links to that shadow, freeing Dr. Yashigata. But he isn't breathing, so gives him CPR, bringing him back to life. As soon as he wakes up, Yashigata tells Takiko to kill everyone, so that Hain would trust him again. But Takiko refuses. Enraged, Dr. Yashigata grabs So's gun and shoots Takiko. But then, he realizes something. This isn't the real Takiko. Shinpei had already predicted this would happen. So he brought Mio's shadow disguised as Takiko. The real Mio and Takiko were safely waiting outside in the car. At that moment, So tackles his father and pins him down. But Yashigata still refuses to speak. Then, Mio's shadow tries to copy him. But she can't. Why? Because he already has immunity. Which means a copy of him had already been created and destroyed before. Yashigata had no idea about this. And this revelation completely shocks him. Just then, from far away, Nigoro appears and challenges them, before taking Ushio's lifeless body with her. Finally, Yashigata realizes that shadows can never be trusted. So, he confesses all of his crimes in front of everyone. Meanwhile, his wife, Chitose, was finally freed from Hain's control. Dr. Yashigata then reveals something shocking. He doesn't want to kill Hain. Why? Because if Hain dies, his wife and Ushio will disappear too. But Ushio firmly says that she's willing to sacrifice herself, if it means saving the entire island. Hearing this, everyone gets fired up. Even Chitose, Yashigata's wife, convinces him to support Shinpei's mission. Finally, Dr. Yashigata decides to talk, and he reveals Hain's true goal. Hain desperately wants to return home. And her home, it lies deep in the ocean's depths. Only shadows can reach that place, which is why Hain chose Shiori's family. She wants to take them with her, to return to her parents in that deep-sea realm. Dr. Yashigata also once wanted to become a shadow himself, so that he could live with his wife in that same realm. But then, he learned the awful truth. He could never become a shadow, and that's when he realized the shadow's false promises. Now, both Chitose and Yashigata decide that this shadow game must come to an end. Then, Dr. Yashigata pulls out a book. Inside, it contains a list of all the people diagnosed with shadow sickness. But in reality, they were actually victims of Hain. And now, the biggest revelation. Shinpei's parents never died in an accident. No, they were also Hain's victims. Yes, Hain killed Shinpei's parents. Why? Because they had discovered the truth about Hiroko Cave, and they were about to expose everything to the world. But before they could, Hain eliminated them. Hain killed Shinpei's parents, and Dr. Yashigata created their body doubles, so that the people of the island wouldn't suspect anything. Shinpei is shocked by this revelation, but then he asks Dr. Yashigata a crucial question. Who is Shurda? Dr. Yashigata reveals the truth. Shurda is Hain's guardian and her very first child. Basically, Hain created Shurda herself. His original name? Yashigata Shurda Heiko. And guess what? He was the first director of the Yashigata Clinic. And not just that. He was secretly feeding humans to Hain. So, you see, a lot of shocking revelations have just been made. We now know the main objective, but we still don't know how this will all end. At this point, episode 16 ends. But, needless to say, a lot is about to happen in the next 8 episodes. And I'll be covering all of that in my next video. So, guys, hit 10 likes, and I'll drop the next video soon, within 1 to 2 days. That was the explanation for episodes 9 to 16 of Summertime Rendering. I hope everything made sense to you, and that you enjoyed the explanation. If you liked it, make sure to share the video. And if you don't want to miss the next episode breakdown, subscribe to our channel, Midnight Manga. See you in the next video. Movie Camera Fire.